Thank you. Okay. Sit down. Wow. That was really remarkable, Tom. Thank you very, very, very much. You know, there's no reason why Tom wouldn't tell the truth either. In fact, no, as he sees it, because we're not, he didn't owe me any money and I don't owe him any, we don't owe each other anything other than our friendship. And we worked together for over 10 years, so almost daily in contact with each other. And I don't think we ever had a crossword. But I don't think, Jimmy, I never had a crossword with you either. Is there anybody, Paul, did we ever have a crossword? Did we really crossword?
We discussed.
Bob Hope, he bloodied my face. Did we really? Ostrich races and things like that. I guess, but I did it. I did everything you asked me to, including pushing that damn baseball with my nose from first base to home plate. In the book, there's a picture of me with my bloody face, because the ball, I was hitting it hard because that's how you had to do it. You couldn't touch it with your hands, and it rolled off the grass into the base path, which is gravel, those of you that know about baseball. So I had to put my head to knock the ball up towards, and believe me, at 90 feet, I think it's 90 feet, isn't it, from first between the bags? I was in baseball for a long time. 90 feet on your hands and knees, pushing a ball with your nose, and doing it in gravel is not exactly, the best thing in the world. And I really bloodied up my face, but fortunately, it didn't permanently scar. The scabs went away. Anyway, Tom said I could take about 5 or 10 minutes before we go into questions and answers. And I've had an exciting, since last couple of weeks before the 60 Minutes piece ran, I've been on a whirlwind tour. Been involved with, and the amount of work that goes into promoting that have written books know that, and those of you that are going to, you need to consider it. It's a commitment. It's a big commitment to write a book. It took Bill Burke and I, my co-author, close to 2 years to do, a year and a half, and we worked on it quite a bit, in most of our spare time, and then now this promotion tour, it takes a lot of energy too, because some days I'm doing 3 or 4 interviews a day, which takes a lot of energy. And but I'm learning. I'm really enjoying it. But it's only really the first week. So we'll see how I am next week, because I'm going from here tomorrow on Sunday. I'm going from here to Chicago and promoting it Sunday night in Chicago. Then I'm going on Monday morning to LA, and I'm doing about 4 appearances there, radio shows and stuff. Then I'm going to San Francisco. So I'm going, for a week solid on the road in those markets. And then the next week I go to New Orleans. Anyway, it's a lot of fun too, and exciting. And then I'm sure that I'll fade away again for another 10 years, maybe forever. Because I don't know what I'm going to do for an encore. I don't have another CNN in my pocket. I wish I did, but I don't. Anyway, one thing I've been asked on these talk shows that I've been on, that they want to ask me about the economy, because they're asking everybody about the economy, because everybody wants to know, does anybody have the answers? Obviously, I thought Henry Paulson was the smartest guy we had in the country. He was the head of, was it Morgan Stanley? Goldman Sachs, that's the hot one. I keep getting them mixed up. That's one of the problems. I can't remember whether I've got Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. My memory's gotten so bad. That's not funny, except that I've lost two of my dearest friends, one to Alzheimer's and one to Parkinson's in the last couple of years. I've lost 6 of my best friends in the last 3 years. And let me tell you, that's when you get towards 70. I mean, that is a huge loss because not many people, I didn't have many more friends than 6. I mean, really close friends. So it's devastating. I'm reading I read a book and I sent several copies out to friends of mine that said, giving you ideas of how to live longer. It said, when you get over 60, try and make 2 new friends a year to replace the ones that you're losing. And making 2 new friends a year is not easy. I mean, you know, I haven't been able to do it. I've gotten a couple friends over the last couple of years. I'm getting maybe 1 a year. If anybody would like to be a friend, please send me a resume. You know, actually, there's a hell of an idea. You know these commercials they have for eharmony.com? I'm going to go to Joseph A. Banks and get a suit and get one free, and I'm going to get one of these little things you can wheel around with that if you can't afford to pay for it, you know, the little cart for people that can't walk because you get too old to walk. I want one of those because the government will pay for it if you can't afford to. And the way things are right now, I don't know whether any of us will be able to afford anything anymore. But an eharmony.com for friends rather than just wives and husbands. I thought about sending in my resume to that and see what comes up, but I just don't have the time to, you know, conduct the surveys and everything. So, anyway, I was doing a financial show for CNBC this weekend with Maria, you know, the Italian lady. She used to work with CNN, too. We had a nice chat. And I finally have come up with, I don't like bailing out the auto industry. They have deserved what they've done. And it's not going to be 3.5 million people out of work. There'll probably only be a few of them. You know, Toyota will take them over at some point. You know, but at any rate, they'll figure something out. But if they're going to give money away to an industry that really employs a lot of people and can use the money too, it's the restaurant industry. I mean, you know, it employs 13 million people, 3 times as much as the auto industry, and employees don't make as much as the auto people do. So it would be, they need it more. And restaurants, we don't have a big lobbying organization in Washington like General Motors does with millions of dollars of lobbying money. Most of the restaurant people are still working in the restaurants. You know, they don't have time to lobby. You know, but that's what I'm going to be pushing from now on. I don't know how you decide which restaurants to give the money to anyway, but you know, when they start divvying it up with Chrysler and Ford, how much are they going to give each one of them? And you remember what Henry Paulson already, with AIG, he gave them $100 billion to start with, and 2 weeks later they came back and need another 40. You know, I mean, and I can tell you the auto industry, giving them $25 million, that might get them through Christmas. I mean, they'll run through it. They've been doing everything wrong for so long. I don't know how now they want $25 million from the government to retool to build smaller cars. Where have they been the last 30 years, you know? I remember I got my first Toyota during Carter administration when oil prices went up. I could see it was a long-term thing, and I went and turned my Cadillac in on a Toyota. And I wept when I did it because, you know, I love that Cadillac. But I've driven a small car ever since. And I've never had a fancy luxury car ever since then. And 7 years ago when they first came out, I got a Toyota Prius, and I got the second one. If you're an environmentalist, you got to have all the latest stuff. And I've already got all those light bulbs, you know, not these kind, but the kind that looks like little fluorescent lights that somebody twisted around. But they're a lot more efficient. And I do pick up garbage, and I'm tired of it. I'm going to ask everybody here to please not throw trash on the streets. And I'm just joking. I picked up so much trash that I feel bad when I don't find any when I walk downtown. Because, you know, it's just like getting hooked on cigarettes or something. You know, once you're hooked on it, you know, it's hard to give it up. So anyway, I guess that's probably all I have to say for right now. I'm right on time, and we could have some Q&A for a little while. Tom, you're supposed to help me with one thing. I'm hard of hearing, so.
First of all, I want to give the 4 people who are here from General Motors a chance. How are you? Tell them there are 4 General Motors executives.
Yeah, I feel sorry for the auto industry and everybody that works in it. You know, no matter what. But I just can't believe, because I saw it 15 years ago that this was coming. And I just can't believe the auto industry couldn't see it themselves. I mean, you know, like they say, they're going to fire, if they give the money to the auto industry, the Congress wants to fire all the directors and all the officers at the 3 big corporations. That's a good idea, but where are you going to find somebody better? Remember, Hank Paulson's our Secretary of the Treasury, and he could, you know, he's got the $700 billion, but before he can even give it away, the first time he's already changed his mind about who he's going to give it to. You know, I think we don't have a clue what the hell to do. And we've had a president that was one of the dumbest people in the country the last 2 years. It's a real tragedy. I don't think he's a bad guy. I think, you know, his compassionate conservative, that was great. I thought he was terrific. I liked Al Gore better, but, you know, because of his work on the environment. Anyway, what we need to do, if we can find him, and I think maybe we have with President-elect Obama, we need to have smart people instead of dumb people running things. And I said that at the Time Warner board meeting. Time Warner stock's at $9. That's less than it was when I left 10 years ago. And I'll tell you one of the reasons I left. When I really walked out the doors, my contract was up. They'd already breached my other contract, but I let them do that. And I didn't have a contract, so I talked with Jerry, and I said, Jerry, whatever his name is. Anyway, the head guy at the company, the chairman. I said, what, Jerry Levin. I said, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? They said, we want to give you $1 million a year. I said, what are my duties? He said, you don't have any duties. I said, you want to give me $1 million a year of the stockholders' money to do nothing? And at the time, they had a retrenchment program going on to downsize a little bit and get rid of some employees. And they were letting people making $40,000 a year go. And I said, you're letting people go making $40,000 a year? You're going to give me $1 million a year? What is hush money to keep my mouth shut? He just said, no, we're just going to give it to you. Well, I said, well, you know what you can do with that $1 million a year? I said, I'm too damn proud to take 1 penny that I don't earn. I said, you can take it and shove it up your new know what. And I walked out the goddamn door. You know.
We may have lost General Motors as a sponsor.
Jerry's gone from the company and has been for a long time.
But we do have Rick Myers of Myers Carpet, who's a very loyal sponsor.
That's right.
Let's take questions, please.
All right. Sorry I went on so long.
And if you'll speak up, and if you can't, I'll try to repeat them. And I see the one at the very back, please.
Ted.
If you would identify yourself, it would help me. This was right here first.
Ted, Rich Elbert from the AJC. Can you hear me?
AJC.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Because The Late Show with David Letterman is only an hour-long program, I kind of feel like the nation is at a bit of a disadvantage. You were outlining some of the things that Americans can do in this current economic climate. In addition to taking the societal role model that is Sanford and Son, what else can Americans do right now to kind of help themselves through this economic downturn?
Well, I didn't finish that damn story about Time Warner. Let me just, because it's pertinent. I said at the board meetings, I said, what we've got to do here, if we want to get the stock up, is stop doing dumb things and start doing smart things. And that's what we really need to do as a nation. For instance, it's not smart to spend more money than you make. And America, according to George Soros on CNN in the morning, a couple of weeks ago, he said the average American, by his calculations, has spent 6% per year more than they made for the last 5 years. And the debts of the average American are greater than the assets of all the Americans put together. In other words, we owe more than we have. We owe $10 trillion. We're borrowing money to the Chinese who save 20 or 25% of their salaries every year, put it in the bank, and then they lend it to us to buy stuff from them. There's nothing wrong with buying stuff from them, but you don't buy more than you can afford. That's how you get to be rich. And that's why I said that, stop doing the dumb things and start doing the smart things. And during my life, I've done more smart things than dumb things, but it's dumb to spend more money than you make for any period of time, particularly on consumption. It's another thing to borrow money to make investments, like I had to do to get CNN going and Cartoon Network. But I intended to make money with it. Then when you get the money, if you get a whole lot, then you have nothing to do. The smart thing to do is give it to those less fortunate than you and then go out and make some more. But don't give it all away. You want to save enough. And that's what I'm really worried about now with the stock market and on the investments going down the crapper, and even gold goes down. I said, and on top of that, all my investment banking friends have gone broke. I used to depend on Merrill Lynch for advice, but they had to sell out because they were broke. And so it's Goldman Sachs and all the rest of them. So if those guys don't know what to do to get out of the financial difficulties, how in the hell am I supposed to know, or anybody in this room? I mean, that's what I'm saying. But one thing I think what we're going to have to do is start saving money, those of us who have jobs, but it's going to be harder because people are going to be getting less money. I talked to my driver in New York. He said, I make $15 an hour. And he said, they're hiring replacements right now at $8 an hour. He said, I'm just worried that they're going to let me go and then rehire me for half as much. That's going to happen because businesses are doing poorly too. Unless I hope I'm wrong, but I think we're in for a hard time. It could be as bad as a depression. And there is no definition of where a recession stops and a depression starts. I look to see, because I want to be able to get the terminology right to talk about what I think may be coming. I just don't know. But business is basically very bad, almost all business, which means profits are down, which means stocks are worth less, land is worth less, houses are worth less. And the dollar's worth less too, really, because they're going to be printing billions or trillions of dollars. Now all of a sudden we're talking in terms of trillions, and we talk about runaway inflation in Zimbabwe, or we could have it here, because where are they going to get the money to bail out Detroit and AIG? They're going to have to print it because they don't have it. The government's already owes $10 trillion. And do you know how much money Russia owes, what their national debt is? Zero. They do not owe one penny. They make less than we do, but they paid off the last of their debt. I mean, it's who's in better shape. And China's got $1 trillion of our money, sitting in their banks that, we're going to have to. I think we're going to have to tighten our belts. And I think, like I was joking, partly about Sanford's son, but if you remember, Lamont moved in with Fred because he couldn't afford to have a house on his own. I think some of our grown children will be moving back in with us, but it'll be fun having the kids at home again, My whole attitude about it is it's going to be tough, but when you race sailboats at sea, there could be a storm around the next day. A big storm could come up like it did, and I described in the book. So, and you go out there looking for those storms. You don't really want them to hit, but when they do, it really gives you a challenge to stay alive. And I think we're going to be challenged just to stay alive, but we'll come out of it stronger. And if we, like I said, instead of driving across town to go see a pro football game that costs $50 for a ticket, walk next door, knock on the door. When your neighbors open up, introduce yourself to them and say, would you like to play bridge tonight? You can do that for nothing, We can play cards with our neighbors. I mean, that's what we did in the 50s. And we can have people move in, our children move back home when they need to.
What do you think about that?
Did that answer the question?
Ted, I know all five of your children. And all five of your children, I say this in all sincerity, are really good citizens, good people.
I haven't got enough room in my house for all five of them to move in.
But if you think of those who have followed you in all of your wild gyrations one of
Well,
the,
in the book I said it's my proudest thing, my proudest achievements, not CNN. It was the success of my family. None of them have ever been DUI or in drug rehab or anything like that, you know. Or they haven't evaded their income taxes. So they're all good, and they all work and try and make the world better. I think that's the real mark of success. There's no such thing as a successful person who has dysfunctional children, by my definition.
Tom Watkins, way back. What do you think of the movement of so much of CNN from Atlanta to New York?
They moved a lot of it to New York, right, already.
So he's asking, what do you think of so much of it having been moved from here to New York?
Well, I like New York, too. You know, you got to be somewhere. You know, at least they haven't closed down here. You know, it's still major operations are located here, right, Jimmy? But that's big in New York, too. I was in the New York Bureau. Wow. But it's big over here, too. It's gotten a lot bigger since I left, but I guess they've got more money.
Okay, one right down here, then I'll come to the back. Identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Sona Chambers, and I was one of those people laid off at Turner when the merger happened. And I wanted to know if you said on one of your speeches recently on TV that AOL cooked the books. And I wanted to know, with Martha Stewart going to jail for lying, why is Gerald Levin and Steve Case not in prison right now?
That's a good question, but they
The question is,
oh, I'm sorry.
why, if Martha Stewart basically went to jail for cooking the books, or in her case, perhaps not having her stock transaction properly, why is it that Jerry Levin and others in the very highest rank, Steve Case, didn't go for the cooking of the books instead of the Treasury Lieutenant used in the case of the merger?
Well, from the Time Warner side, the Time Warner, to my knowledge, didn't cook the books, and Time Warner only did one day of due diligence on the financial situation of AOL, which was overstated. And Steve Case said he didn't know about it, and it was a little bit questionable. That's why no one went to jail, because it wasn't black and white. It was gray area, the restatement, the overstatement of the earnings, which allowed them to get this high price. And Time Warner, or Time Warner AOL Time Warner, paid the government several $1 billion without admitting crime. But the government wanted to do that and get the money so they could give it to the auto industry a few years later. So that's what happened.
Yes, very good. What are you sailing these days? She's from Sail Magazine.
I'm not sailing. I basically phased it out in the early '80s because I had to give up something, and I wanted to spend time with my family, and I wanted to make sure that CNN made it. I needed to work, so I gave up my yacht racing, which was hard to do. I loved it.
What are your favorite stories in the book? You have other people telling stories about you. What are your favorite stories?
Oh, I don't know. I think we put too much emphasis on lists. What's your favorite place? What's your favorite? Wherever I am is my favorite place. Whatever page I turn to, my favorite page.
You gave a lot of money to the UN.
Well, UN causes. I couldn't give it. I tried to give it to the UN, but they were set up where they couldn't receive money. But the U.S. federal government can. And I once gave the federal government $32 million to pay the shortfall in the dues, and that freed up $1 billion. We were 2 years behind in our payments to the UN, and they couldn't pay the peacekeepers.
What is the UN not doing?
What is the UN doing that you think it should not be doing? Okay, what is the UN not doing you think?
Not doing what?
What is the UN not doing that you think it should be?
I'd like to see it be more successful, but it can't really be any more successful than the nation states, because they work for the 191 nations of the world, and everything considered, they're doing certainly a better job than the U.S. federal government has done the last 8 years. So, in my opinion, by a long shot. But we don't have world peace yet, and we don't have nuclear disarmament, and we don't have a solution to global warming and climate change. So, but they're working on it, and I'm helping them. And hopefully, the biggest thing that worries me about this recession is that it'll take our eye off the ball on global warming and nuclear disarmament, while the president and the government, worries with bailing people out rather than how to cut taxes, because we're being so successful. We don't need to bail anybody out.
Incidentally, as in Widow, my hearing is no better than Ted's. So please speak up loud. Please.
Oliver, blogging about the Olympics. I read in your book a lot of excerpts about the Goodwill Games. I've seen in other books that you were up for the Olympic team in the 1960s, but you didn't quite make it. Any regrets about not making the sailing team? You reflect on that watching the Olympics.
Yeah, well, I wanted, when I was a youngster, I was inspired by the Olympics, like everybody was, I think, and I worked hard in my sailing to try. Sailing is an Olympic sport, and I tried to make it, but I didn't succeed. And then by the time I quit trying, I was too old. So, but that was one of the few disappointments. I went on with my sailing career at ocean racing, and 12 meters, and won the America's Cup and a lot of races. But I didn't make it to the Olympics. But I never won an NBA championship either. When I had the Hawks, I wanted to. If I would have loved to have done those two things, and I would have liked to have kept my job at Time Warner. I got let go, and I was Times Man of the Year. I was the only employee at Time Warner that was Times Man of the Year, and they let me go anyway. So let me tell you something. Anybody could be let go. And let me tell you, how he did it. He called me on the telephone and told me on the phone, "We've restructured the company and you're out." And I said, "Jerry, I've got a year and a half to go on my contract that guarantees me running the cable networks." He said, "We're tearing up that contract." I said, "You're doing what? You're abrogating a contract unilaterally?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "The only thing you can do is sue us." Well, I couldn't sue CNN. I loved it too much. I got to sue my employer, even though I wasn't, no longer employed. But anyway, so if I could be let go, particularly after I made billions of dollars out of nothing, if I could be let go, anybody can be let go. So don't think you have job security. I don't care who you are.
All right, we'll go right here. Go right over here, please. Yes. Right here, please. Yes, you.
I was really happy to see that Sam Nunn, whom you share the Nuclear Threat Initiative program with, is going to be advising Obama. Do you have any good suggestions for other cabinet members for Obama?
Do you have any suggestions, other than Sam Nunn, for cabinet positions with Obama?
No. I have a lot of good ideas. I mean, there are a lot of good, smart people. I'd like to see Colin Powell back in an important position, and if they give Hillary one, she's smart too. I mean, there are a lot of smart people. We got to get them in the right places, though. That's exactly right. And I think Obama's got a good team already, and I'm pretty confident that he'll make good choices. I hope he stays away from Cheney and Rumsfeld, though.
Right over here, please.
I would advise him to do that.
I read somewhere that you once said life is a game and money is a way to keep the score. What advice would you give the younger generation who'd like to follow your footsteps but don't have the money?
What advice would you give the younger generation that would like to follow in your footsteps but don't have the money?
Well, I go out and make the money. That's what I did. I didn't start out with much money. Go out and make it. And for a one-liner, because I get asked, what's the secret of success in 10 words or less? Early to bed, early to rise, work like hell, and advertise.
Yes, right over here in the red dress, please.
Right. Well, thank you. Right.
First of all, she thanks you for all that you did with Tiger Classic Movies, but also the young lady at the table with her thinks you should have a reality show on TV that basically you would use to make friends.
Me and Donald Trump, huh? Oh,
Right,
that's too much work.
Side that I wasn't getting to. Please, right, Mario supporter, once of the AJC.
Supporter.
Supporter.
Not supporter.
Now with the Atlanta Business Chronicle. You've seen many crossroads in your life. If you could have redone it, would you have wanted to deal with Sean Malone rather than Jerry Levin?
No, Time Warner was the right place for us to be. And when we merged with Time Warner, everything was fine. I had 10% of the company, and they treated me with kid gloves. I didn't have to worry because I had good friends that had another 20% of the company. So I really had quite a bit of support from an ownership standpoint. But when we merged with AOL and gave over half the company to them for nothing, or practically nothing, I was diluted down, and that's when they came after me. But Time Warner had assets. They had the newer Warner Brothers movies, and we had the pre-50 Warner Brothers movies like Casablanca and so forth, and putting that back together, and all the Bugs Bunnies, and it really, and the magazines would have been good support. I envisioned, and it really is happening this way, that in the long term, that television news and print news would merge on computers, where you would be able to see pictures and get the information. And having all those first-class magazines that Time Warner had would have been very helpful. We could have, as we did, we could have had CNN SI, which Time Warner closed down, as well as CNN FM. And I'll just give you another example of a dumb move. As I understand it, CNN FM, which was in half the homes in the country and was breaking even, was closed down by the Time Warner management at the time, which was not, Jeff Bewkes was not running the company, I don't believe. I think Parsons was. But everyone knew that Rupert Murdoch was interested in getting in the financial news business on television. And if they'd have just given him a call and asked him, instead of closing it down, they got nothing for it. They offered to sell it to him. I said, Rupert, when I had lunch with him a couple of months ago, I said, Rupert, you'd have paid at least $100 million. He said, try $200 or $300 million. If they just given me a phone call, they would have made $200 million that they just closed down without even thinking about it. I mean, that's so stupid. You ought to go to jail for that. Don't close anything down before you try and sell it that you don't want, because sometimes somebody else's garbage is another man's a golden asset.
I would also say that at the time that we created CNN Sports Illustrated, which Jim headed, in addition to the sports department, and CNN FM Business Service, Business Channel, Blue Dogs headed, Ted and I had basically a very binding oral agreement from Jerry Levin that we would immediately be placed on all the Time Warner cable systems. Yes, what? We were not placed on any Time Warner cable systems, which to me is one of the most unbelievable stories.
And the battle, the long, because of retransmission consent, this is what happened in Washington. The broadcasters finally got the Congress to give them some legislation which gave them a rule called retransmission consent, which gave ESPN, which was owned by ABC, a huge advantage over CNN, Sports Illustrated, because they could get coverage because they had leverage of retransmission consent, and we didn't. We were just operating in the free marketplace, and that's one of the reasons why I merged with Time Warner, because I could see that we were now at a disadvantage because we had lost a major battle in Washington. Let me tell you, the battles, and General Motors is fighting a battle in Washington right now for their survival at our expense. You know, and AIG has already won the battle there. They're 140 million. I mean, you know, if you had a small life insurance company or a small insurance company, and you were operating intelligently and doing decently, the government's gone, and you drove your big competitor to the wall financially where they were up against it, and then they go to the government and get bailed out, but they're not bailing out the small insurance companies. Henry Paulson worked for, not Morgan Stanley, but Goldman Sachs, right? So he was running one of those big companies, and so he's helping out his pals at the big companies at the expense of the little guys, like the restaurant industry that's really struggling. You know,
All right, right over here, please, back. I'll come over here. Thank you.
a lot of stuff goes on that most people don't know about. And I'll tell you what else, the media doesn't report on it. I mean, how many media stories were run about what the influence of the military-industrial complex is over the country? The $500 billion a year that we give to our military every year, which is more than all the rest of the world combined. We try and make enemies, the military-industrial complex does, out of India and China. Not India, sorry, China and Russia. So we have enemies, but we're outspending them on the military budget 20 to 1. I mean, really, the Chinese just want to sell us shoes, and the Russians want to sell their gas to Europe. They don't want another war. They had a really bad experience in World War II, both of them, and they don't want that. But there's no stories on that because the big military contractors, General Electric, which owns NBC, also has the big military, and they don't want to take on the government because they might lose some military contracts. Let me tell you, we're in a scary situation, really, if you really take a look at it. And there were no stories about nuclear weapons either. I mean, we're sitting here with the Russians with thousands of nuclear warheads on hair trigger alert. It can't be recalled. If the button gets pushing, you know, you never know about the state of somebody's mental health. Anybody can have a nervous breakdown, and the President of the United States, the President of Russia, without consulting with anybody, just had to push that button, and within seconds, the nuclear arsenals are launched, and there's no life left on Earth the next day. Okay? That's how dangerous we live. Nobody even talks about it or thinks about it. I do. Don't worry. I'll worry for you. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're getting close to what needs to be in, but I'll recognize one here. There was one I recognize right over here, but we do need to keep them brief, please.
Ah,
How do you feel now?
How many people think I like Nancy Drake? Or what was the other guy's name that went to Fox, that guy? Glenn Beck. I mean, with his name up there on this big, it ought to be CNN, not Glenn Beck. I mean, in my opinion.
Jim, we're so glad you're here today. All right, please.
I can't watch it anymore.
Right here.
Hi, Ted. Perhaps one of your comments will be answered today, and then it's my understanding that Colin Powell has agreed.
Really? Has that been announced? Well, it could be bad information, you know. Did you get it on CNN or Fox News? If it came on CNN, then I'd believe it. If it's on Fox News, I'd question it. I'm going to do...
The question is, well, we were not finished. The question is, she's making a statement that she believes that Colin Powell is going to become the new Secretary of Education. Ted is saying, and I would repeat, that we don't have any confirmation on that. At least we didn't at the time we came into this lecture. Please.
Please don't believe me.
Okay.
I have asked you in the past about being involved in some way with the new environmental channel that has been put out. I think Disney owns it, and you declined. You said good luck to me. I'd like to see you do some sort of reality show there, promoting and taking in ideas from people that would help the environment move forward, as I know that's one of the...
That's not a question. That's a suggestion, which is fine. Thank you.
The suggestion is that Ted will play an important role in the environmental front, particularly with
I got it.
doing a reality show. But,
I sat across from you at the end of last season at the end of the Hawks game.
I'm doing that right now, but I'm trying to get on networks that have audience and distribution. When no, yeah, and the environmental networks that are still trying to get started. Good luck to them. I really would love to see them do well. I just don't know whether 24 hours of environmental programming might be a little too much for the average person,
I'm sorry,
even environmentalists.
This is going to need to be left, please.
Variety it is. So I'm asking, not your...
Hey, you're done.
Please.
One question per customer.
Who's making smart decisions in TV these days? What do you see?
Who is making smart decisions in television these days?
Who's making smart decisions?
In television.
In old television like cable and broadcast are in a lot of trouble because the internet is really cutting into their audience, and I don't think they certainly won't go away, but they're going to have a harder time, particularly with the economy where advertising budgets are going to be cut. That's why media stocks are all low, because the prospects in the future, the near-term future, aren't so good. But all the stocks are down. Even gold's down. You can't. I've lost a lot of money too. Is there anybody in here that hasn't lost a lot of money? Well, if you sold, they didn't have any. Thank you.
All right, Ted, do you have anything left to say?
Well, what I'm having put on my tombstone is, and it's the last line in the book, I have nothing more to say. Thank you all very much.